Super. So my name's Laith Morar. As said, I am the lead developer on the world side of the JD Edwards team within Q Software. I've been with Q Software quite a long time, and my background really is technical developing. So if anybody has any questions for me on that side, sales, marketing, anything like that, I can forward on to other people in the organization. But if your questions are technical related, I'm probably the best resource to go to. And you can see my email address there, laithm@qsoftware.com. Okay. So quick session overview. There's a fair bit of content, as I said, to get through today. We've got a few slides. You'll probably be relieved to hear this is a lot more demonstration than it is slides. So hopefully it won't be too heavy for you on reading stuff. It'll be a bit more engaging, seeing applications working and running and seeing how things hang together from a functional point of view. So I'm going to do a quick intro to Q Software. I won't take long. Most people in the JD Edwards space know who Q Software are, know what we do, but I'll take a couple of minutes just in case you don't. And then we're going to look at segregation of duties really initially from a strategic perspective. So how you manage SOD, how within the concept or within the confines of the world system, what your options are for segregation of duties management, and how the incremental releases of world over the years has impacted the way you can manage your SOD. Okay. Well, and then I'm going to get into the tool itself, why we created it, what we think it does for you, and then tie this into what we're doing most recently. So obviously when we're using the tool, you can set up rules and do reporting and all sorts of things off those. But what we're increasingly trying to do, really on most of the product sets, but in this case, in the segregation of duties tool set, is to do preemptive management. So if you're changing an aspect of security, whether it's allocating a role or changing actually security or whatever it is, if that's going to raise a segregation of duties conflict for you, we're going to throw up warnings for you and help you do that. And that's kind of the latest functionality and hopefully something that will help people on an ongoing basis when they're managing their SOD. Then we're going to look at reporting. We actually have a challenge on the Insight side. I'm going to try and show you a couple of screens on the Insight side, but our Insight server is having problems. But I can show you our native reporting and extracts. But we do have Insight, and if I cannot actually show you the Insight reports, I can direct you to some data sheets. But it's a great tool. It's a not .NET type tool, but hopefully I can show you a couple of things on that. And then we're going to talk about the process of how you actually sort of string all this stuff together. So, the theme of this webinar is really about automation of these processes. So how you can actually get through from, how you can schedule a job that takes you from the beginning to the end in terms of automatically reporting your segregation of duties conflicts either on a daily, weekly, or a lot of our organizations sometimes only report quarterly or even 6 monthly when they're doing their audit reports, audit and compliance reports. And as I said, at the end, I'm going to leave 5 or 10 minutes for questions at the end. If you want any of the collateral that I'm showing you, be it about scheduling jobs or some of the template information, just drop me a line and I can forward you, or if you want the presentation, I can just forward you that information. But as I said, we're recording everything today, so hopefully that will be useful. Okay, so a quick intro to Q Software. We're exclusively working on JD Edwards security. That's all we do on both the World and the Enterprise One side. And we've been doing this since 1996, so we've been around a long time now, nearly 20 years. Our tools really collate and extend JD Edwards security. So there's plenty of organizations out there, particularly, relevant to the world space, who have generic OS 400 type tools. Our tools don't really, with the exception of a couple of small things we do around multiple roles and a little bit around OS 400 object security, 98% of what we do is really extending JD Edwards security functionality. We're not here to try to make the job more complicated. We're hopefully, if we've done our jobs well, we're making JD Edwards easier to use, not introducing a whole new load of concepts. And our applications, as you'll see when we jump through our screens, our applications very much sit in the JD Edwards application layer. So again, when I was talking about the generic AS400 type tools, you often have to jump out of a JDE type menu to a generic AS400 type menu or an off-box tool. Our software looks and feels exactly like JDE, okay? If you our menus are JD Edwards menus, and it's all very seamless in that sense. We have most of our developers are now based in the UK. Actually, we've just taken on a couple of people in India to help out with testing and some of the new project stuff on the Enterprise One side. But most of the development comes out of the UK. Most of the sales are out of the US. And we've actually have a new tech director who's based out in Denver, former JD Edwards guy. And we also have regional offices to help us with a lot of geographies. We have a lot of clients and a lot of geographies. So we have various partners around the world who help us with 24/7 support, essentially. So I think I've got a couple of customer lists there. As I said, we've got about 300 customers now, I think, and we probably match JDE in terms of the E1 world distribution with about 80% on Enterprise One and about 20% of those customers on the world side. So to talk about segregation of duties, so clearly when you're trying to manage your SOD exposures and trying to manage your SOD procedures, the efficacy of that process comes down to how good your security controls are, okay? And we have to kind of look at some aspects of security strategy to really couch this and to understand the nature of the problem that we're trying to fix. For historical reasons, JD has some real challenges. If any of you guys are on old releases, and we still have surprising number of customers on old releases of World. We have businesses that are both on Oracle maintenance contracts and not on maintenance contracts. And we have customers who've been on A7.3 for 15 years and are still on A7.3. We also have, JD Edwards themselves, Oracle themselves will tell you now that the majority of their paying subscriber base are on 9.1, 9.2, 9.3, and now 9.4. But as I said, we find lots of people who are still on A7.3. And what I'm going to show you, one of the things I'm going to show you is how the evolution of the security through those releases has changed things and actually made things easier. So if you are thinking of upgrading, hopefully you'll see there's plenty of advantages in getting up to the later releases of JDE World. So the two things that we tend to talk about when we talk about security is application security in terms of all doors closed and navigation control in terms of all doors open. I suspect the ADC, the all doors closed and all doors open, are perhaps more familiar terms. And essentially, an all doors closed approach is a way of saying that you're going to lock your system down at the object level. Okay, you're going to say these programs are only accessible through these to these users or groups of users or star public. With navigation control, it's about how you control where people can get around your system and through your menus and your screen structures. Now, they both have their advantages and disadvantages, but application security has particular advantages when it comes to segregation of duties. Okay, and that's really because when you're trying to work out who can do what, our tools allow you to do it through both mechanisms, but when you get into the cross-referencing this in SOD, and I think you'll see this when we show you some of the screens, if you can do it at the application layer through all those closed, it's going to be much simpler because it's an on-off switch against that program object. And you can essentially query one table and you can say, these people do or do not have access to that object. So when you extrapolate out to the complexity of segregation of duties, that granular, that simple control is really advantageous. As I said, if you're on old releases of World and you're using all doors open, you can still do it with our tool set. It just tends to be a bit less responsive, as you'll see. As we said here, so ADC there is simpler and clearer way to lock applications and to report back on who can do what. So the thing I'm going to show you now in a second is how the all doors closed locks, these on-off switches, have improved through the different releases of World, A7.3, A9.1, A9.2, and A9.3. Okay, let me show you a couple of screens. So I've got a 7.3 environment here, and if I go into our tool set, as I said, when you come into our tools, they're all use the standard JDE menu configurations, menu structures, and within our World Analyzer tool here, option 2, we have a tool that allows you to view essentially all the programs that users have access to on the system. Okay, so if I go to my profile in this 7.3 environment, we can see here down here a list of all the programs that I have access to. Okay, in the bottom half of the screen. I'm not going to go into the detail of the screen. This isn't an Access Analyzer demo. I'm doing this to show you the evolution of the controls. And over here on the right-hand side of the screen, you see the methodologies that people use. These are the things that we resolve to show how people can access an application, whether it's through a function key, whether they have access to the screen, whether they can get there via a menu, or whether they can get there via low level. Okay, that means a function key route from another screen. Okay, and people have always bought this tool because it it resolves all those complex questions. However, as we move up the stack of releases of JDE, let me come into another screen, another session, come into my 9.1 environment. We can see in the 9.1 release of JDE, new action code controls were added. Okay, so we had the from and the to action code added, but nothing really changed in terms of where you could get there. Okay, it was still, in terms of access control, it's still screen-based, menu-based, and low level. Okay, this F/K indicator here is telling you that someone has function key access to the screen. Okay, and that's a way of, that was a methodology. If you had none of the function keys, you couldn't actually get into the screen. So it was actually an old all doors closed lock, even in these 7.3 and 9.1 environments. When we came to 9.2, if I come into a 9.2 environment, excuse me, jumping around a few screens here. Oracle added the action code inquiry capability, okay? And that was really valuable because now you could say, whereas we had that same old action code capabilities over here, but with A9.2, we now have the capacity to say, I want to say at that screen level, I want to take away that ability to get into that screen. So this is, as we were saying, one of those all doors closed, all doors open locks. What we actually did in 9.2 is we broke out application security, essentially all doors closed. We could actually change these headers to ADO and ADC, but AppSec is essentially all doors closed. And this old video lock was in the old function key controls in 7.3 and 9.1, and in 9.2 we got this action code inquiry. And it was great because you could just come in and you could say option 3 against the video screen, and I want to do no, and it would lock the screen out, and it would lock that screen for anywhere. Okay. And things really improved even further when you got to A9.3. Okay, so if I come into our A9.3 environment, again, we've still got those old action code controls, but our application security has been beefed up even further in that we've got this new F column here, which stands for the report writer locking screen. Okay, so I don't know how familiar you guys are with A9.3. Excuse me, put the right filter on there. I don't know how familiar you are with A9.3, but you've got this locking screen. So now with the combination of the action code inquiry, which pretty much does lock every 100% of your screens within JDE, and with the report writer form capability, which locks 90, 95, maybe 98% of your batch processes, either the Dream Writer, World Writer, Fast Star, or Report Writer level, you've got fantastic ADC, all doors closed control blocks. So sorry if I was jumping around a few screens there, but the purpose was really to show you how the evolution of the new controls in JDE makes this all doors closed locking a much more viable solution for you guys as you move up the stack. So if you are thinking of going up, and you're trying to make a case within your organization, that's one more reason to do it. Okay, going back to our slides for a minute. So moving on to SOD specifically, I suppose the question is, why did we create a segregation of duties tool? Well, Analyzer, the access control piece of this, was our bread and butter and our oldest solution, and increasingly what we found out was that people were using things like spreadsheets to cross-reference who could do what against their auditors' questions about their SOD policy. Okay, and trying to put, if your SOD policy is in any way complex, or not even in any way complex, once you get past half a dozen rules, it's really impractical to work out who can do what, even if you do have those good all doors closed locks and things like for the action code and the report writer form. With our SOD tool, as we built a native and specific tool, we could make our system as flexible as possible. Okay, we allowed people to. I'm sorry, I'm just going to check chat, make sure there are no questions. Okay, so yeah, when we defined our tool, as you'll see in a minute, when we start to set up some SOD rules, it allows the system to be much more flexible. And you can see the third point on the slide there. We can segregate a program from another program. We can segregate collections of programs in terms of in terms of functions. So if we say that it requires many programs to do something, we can define a function within the segregation of duties tool, and then we can segregate one function from another function, or one function from a program, or whatever else. We can also define, I'll show you, I won't go into this for a second, but we can define video and function key combinations, events, if you like, within the screens. And we can segregate Q software roles. So JD Oracle within A93 brought in their own multiple role capability. We've had multiple roles running about nearly 10 years now in World, and a lot of our clients use our own multiple roles. A role is essentially a group, okay, and we can do SOD now against those multiple roles. And with segregated roles, if we're saying one person should have access to one role and shouldn't have access to another role, because we control the allocation process, we can actually do preemptive checking. And now, as I was saying at the beginning, with the latest release of World SOD, we can do preemptive checking within those analyzer screens when we're updating action code, function key security, and the report writer form. So those three columns that were under the AppSec, as you're making changes to those, if they're going to impact your SOD policy, we can go, whoa, don't do that, and I'll show you how that works. We also have a bunch of templates. So a really common question that comes when people use our SOD tool is what sort of templates have you got, and can we use those as a starter? And certainly yes, we have templates. I'll show you some of those. So okay, let's get into demoing some of the SOD stuff. So if I jump back to my AS400 screen. I'm in a 9.2 session there. Let me come out to my 9.1 session as I've set it up for the demo. So, as I said, our menus are on the QSG menu stream. We were in World Analyzer to show you that stuff. So to go to World SOD, I simply take an option 8 from our QSG menu. This is really a catch-all menu for segregation of duties within our applications. Okay, and it's the SOD functions and rule maintenance option 2 is the place where you define your SOD policy, as it were. Okay, and that acts as the driver for when you're generating your SOD reports. So if I take an option 2 in here, I've actually got a temp rule set up. Let me clean that out. Always leave one in there. On my testing. Okay, so this screen actually works in two modes. Okay, we're currently in rules mode, and I'll show you function mode in a second. So if I want to define, so as I said, within the screen we define all of our rules, and when we've got our rules defined, we can say who violates those rules. Okay, so to define a rule, I think the simplest rule we could define, so let's call it a simple rule, is to say someone with access to one program shouldn't have access to another. So that's, you can make these rules as simple as you like. The first thing you need to do, or you don't need to do, is apply a severity code. I won't do one now because it's a very simple rule. We're not going to do it. And then we can apply a type code. Type codes are just UDCs, and they're ways for us to categorize our SOD rules. And in this instance, I'm just going to pick GN for a general rule. And in this instance, I'm going to segregate a couple of programs. Now we have down here some selectors, so we can select the roles that we've got defined, we can select the functions that we've got defined, and in this instance we can select the programs that we're going to find. So if I do an F17, I want to segregate, let's say, I think it's the P4114 for inventory adjustments. And in here, you'll see over here, there's a U column, and the U column says whether at what level of access we're concerned about. So it may be that if you're not worried about someone getting into a screen, you would just define whether its inquiry is the level that you're concerned about. Okay, but in this instance, we're going to say update. So what we're saying is if somebody can update through their inventory adjustment screen, I want to know about it, as it were. And let's say we want to segregate that from the P43112, which is a receipts PO item entry. And again, we're going to specify that we want to see who can update. So what we're saying is someone who's got update access to the inventory adjustments should not have update access to the P43112. Hopefully that's clear. Excuse me. Oh, sorry, got to give it a severity code. What have I done there? Excuse me, I've given it too many ones in my program ID. Okay, so now we've defined this rule, simple rule, and we've said someone with access to inventory adjustments update should not have access to receipts by PO account update. Now, what we do if we wanted to report against that is to come out, run the refresh and extract program, and then run some of our violations reports. Okay, and I'll show you how that works in a second. But I just want to, before I do that, I want to show you how we would define some more complex rules. Okay, so that in a sense is the simplest type of rule. But as we said in our slides, we can segregate programs from programs, roles from roles, Q software roles from roles, and we can segregate functions from functions. Now, so before we can segregate a function, we have to understand what a function is. Okay, and to do that, we just have the same screen, and I'm going to do an F to go into functions mode, and I've defined a bunch of functions here. Okay, now, so a function is, as I said, is simply a collection of programs. Okay, and the reason we've created functions is because in some instances there may be more than one way of doing something. Okay, so if I go back to the rules, that simple rule that I defined, if there were more than one way of defining inventory adjustments, okay, I could define another rule and then another rule if there were 3 or 4 ways of doing it. But by just defining a function, okay, and let's say I had 5 different inventory adjustments over here, I can define which program IDs do inventory adjustments, and then I can just use that approvals as an element within my rule. Okay, so it's just a way of abstracting some of the complexities of the program objects that go into defining your rules. Okay, and we can say both whether there are 2 ways of doing something, or we can also say if you require more than one program to do something. So that's what we've actually done down here in the vouchers functions. We've said that these objects down here, the P4314, which is the match open purchase order application, we're saying it requires that and the PO4101505, which is a voucher entry. We're saying both of those objects at update level are required to enter vouchers. Okay, and we've actually defined multiple instances as of these. And the advantages of these types of rules, we're saying actually you need 2 programs to do something, is if someone's only got access to one of those, a lot of simple SOD solutions are going to flag that as a violation. Okay. But in this instance, only if they've got access to both do they have access to vouchers. Okay, so I think that it's a little bit counterintuitive, but the best way I can describe it is to say that reading down of the screen is all. Okay, so we're saying this program or this program can do approvals, and down here we're saying this program and this program, these 2 programs, or these 2 programs can do vouchers. So hopefully that makes sense. The other thing we can do within functions is we can say, so some of our clients came back to us and said, okay, fine, I can see when someone gets to a screen, but it's when they do something specific within that screen that I actually have an issue. So if you take these 2 functions down here called purchase order accept and purchase order reject, we're actually saying it's the specific selection option against the subfile entry in that screen. In this instance, the V43080, we're saying by taking SO1 on there, you're accepting a purchase order. Okay, so it's just a more granular way of defining a function. We're not simply, if someone can get to this screen, but they can't do this, doesn't mean that they can actually do a purchase order acceptance or a purchase order rejection. So by putting the screen key combo in, it allows us to define these granular functions as well. And when you're defining these, you'll see these element types come up as well. So if it's a program, you'll see a P for element type. If it's a screen, you'll see a V. If it's a K, you'll see it's a function key. Okay, and that applies to the rules mode screen as well, as we'll see in a minute. Okay. So there, I've defined a bunch of functions. What I can then do, if I go back to the rules mode in the screen, is I can define a function rule. So I can say FNC rule, won't bother with severity code, give it GN, and let's select my first function with an F18. I'm going to select, I want to say someone I know who can do approvals. I want to see that they cannot not do approvals and vouchers. Okay, do an action code change. Excuse me, don't know what happened there. FNC rule. Approvals and vouchers. What there is it giving me? Okay, I need to give it a severity level. Apologies. Okay, so we've now defined this other simple function rule and says we're now anyone who can do approvals, who can't do vouchers. So just to show you how that works, what we would then do is come out here, run the refresh extract. I'm just going to submit that job because it'll take a couple of minutes to run. And what this job does is it goes away and it generates all of the access information for all of the objects within that matrix. Okay, so you can imagine if you had a complex matrix of programs, you need to know who can access all of these objects that are pertinent to those rules. And if I come out actually to another screen, let me go back to my 9.3 screen. I've got some other rules defined in here, which are pretty complex. You can see, if you've got a lot of programs in your matrix, that job will basically go away, update, our reference table as to who's got access to those objects, so that we can then report against who can do what on the system. Okay. So let's see how long if that job is going to complete. Okay, that's still running. It'll take a couple of minutes. It usually takes about, this is an old 170 box. There you go, it's finished. And once that's complete, we can start to run our reports. Okay, so all of the reports are on the right-hand side of the screen here. The simplest 2 reports are up here, which simply list the rules that you've defined. Okay, if I run that, you can see if you want to report that back. We can list the rules that we've defined on our system. Simple report, and we can define the functions as well. And here, option 15. Again, the functions that we define on the screen. So if you need to report those, you can just run those reports. And these are the violations reports down here, which are probably more important. Now these top three here, 17, 18, and 19, are actually Dreamliner parameterized versions of the same report. Okay, so I'm just going to run one of those quickly for you. Option 17, and you've got all these POs. So we ship. As I said, our tools are very much of JDE. So you can do process option definitions. You can do all sorts of controls, and you'll see down here in all of these reports there's an option to extract the data to an extract file. Okay, so if you want to export, we find most of our clients have got third-party reporting tools because they're mature 400 sites, most 400 sites, and they will typically pull stuff off, even if it's just to an Excel spreadsheet, but it might be to a BI reporting tool. So these are the rules that we defined. These are all the people that can, starting off the group profiles up here, these are all the people that can violate those rules. And if I wanted to look at that extract table, what was it, F5A 201A, I believe, 2012. 2012, that's the violations as we see them. So you can see a violations based in a spool file format or in an export format, okay? Or as we'll see in a minute in the insight format. The more these reports down here are more detailed violations reports. Okay, so if I take an option 1, take that parameter out. Come out. Okay, so you can see now here, actually down to the program ID elements within these rules. So you've got these detailed reports in here. Okay, so, and again, that stuff's exported to an extract file. Okay, I'm not going to dwell on too much on that because I've got a few more things to get through. Let me just quickly check questions. Okay. Okay, so that is the kind of, let me forget back to my PDF. That's very much how we do the rule definition and the reporting. Okay, and the application, as you saw, comes with a pretty comprehensive set of reports on that right hand side of the screen. And we can do extract. So as I said, if you're using Cognos or BI Publisher, or that's Oracle BI reporting tool, or Excel, or whatever it is to export your data, you can do that. And we also have insight reports. I'm just going to see if I can show you these very quickly. Unfortunately, as I said, our insight server is down, but I may be able to show you a screen capture from actually when we did our last webinar. This may or may not work, excuse me. Okay, so I have here, I think I've just got an Insight screen capture. The nice thing about the Insight toolset is that it's obviously, because it's a Microsoft framework, you've got all the tabs in here if you want to drill down from violations reports. And if you're the users, the business unit users of this tend to be less tech savvy and less comfortable with green screen. So these insight reports, we've got about 11 or 12 pre-built insight reports, and you can drill down from headers to details. As I said, I'm sorry I can't show you these working live because we've got problems with our insight server, but hopefully that gives, if you want more detail on the insight stuff, I can get that to you. But it is a really cool tool, and you can do like print to PDF or print to Excel or anything like that. So getting back to my presentation. A second. Okay, so as we said, comprehensive set of reports and the insight reports, and we've got a set of templates, and these templates are based on programs, functions, or roles. Okay, I won't get into this because it's a little bit complicated, but if you want us to send you samples of those, what we genuinely find is that when people do implementations, it's a great way of getting people going off the bat. Okay, so if they haven't got any SOD definitions on their system yet, or there's kind of a vague request from the audit department, because we've got these templates, because we've done it so many times, actually I'll show you a couple of them quickly because I've got them on the screen. So this is our template based on functions. So these are our function headers, if you like, and these are the function details. These are the elements, the program elements that go into each of those functions, as I was, like the one we saw us define. And we've also got a template based on program objects. So if you want to do your, excuse me, that's the wrong one. Get to another screen. Yeah, so we've got one based on roles and we've got one based on program objects. I'm not going to spend too much time on this because I'll get too bogged down in the detail. But if you want to see those, I'm happy to share those with you. Okay. And the other thing we do is end-to-end job automation. So again, a lot of our customers say, okay, great, I can go into the menus, I can run all these options. But what you can also do is you can schedule, once you've defined your SOD matrix, you can schedule that job to refresh that data if you want to refresh it on a daily or weekly or monthly basis. And you can schedule all your reports to generate your report output as well. Okay. And the nice thing about if you have both the segregation of duties and the analyzer tool, all those programs that were in the program matrix, as you will see in a second, as you generate that information, it keeps it up to date within Analyzer as well. Obviously, those two are fairly tightly linked. Okay. So the last thing I really wanted to show you was this preemptive element, and the preemptive functionality really works on two levels. It works against the role definitions, and it works against now within analyzers we're making changes to our analyzer. As we're making changes to security with analyzer, it preemptively warns you of the changes that you're making. So within the roles-based system, I need to come into another session here. The way our multiple roles application works is you simply come into our role allocation screen through Roles Manager here, option 14, and you allocate or deallocate roles to people. And as I said, roles are simply group profiles. So if I look at my user, I can see all the roles that I've got, access to. Okay, address book maintenance, blah blah blah, AR manager, AP manager. So I'm going to define a rule that says, let's call it roles, severity 1, and we're going to say user role AP MGR manager. It should be segregated from the AR manager role. Okay. So we've defined this role here that says someone with role AP manager shouldn't have access to the AR manager function. In this instance, I'm going to now give it the severity 9, and I'll explain what that severity code does in a second. So now what happens within our role manager screen, excuse me, what now happens within our role manager screen is if I try and allocate, so I've already got access to the AP manager function here, okay? But if I try and allocate the AR manager role to myself, I now get the stop. So the thing says, by allocating AR manager to myself, I'll be violating that role A that we just created, okay? But what I can also do is I can mitigate against that. I can simplify that, and I can say, all right, I want to reduce the severity to an option to level 5 against this role rule. And this time when I try and do the allocation, it actually allows me to do it, but it gives me a warning message. Okay, so AR manager I have over here, AP manager, when I do the allocation, do an action code change, it now gives me a warning and says, by allocating AR manager, I'll violate the rule for myself. Do I want to proceed? And I can take a Y to proceed. Okay. And if I was to drop that severity further, it wouldn't give me any warning at all, but it would just be a reporting. So there's actually 3 tiers of severity in the role allocation. Okay, when you're allocating and deallocating roles. So if long story short, if you want to say someone with this role who shouldn't have that role, you can do it, and you can do it preemptively. You can make sure that someone doesn't do that allocation when you don't want them to. So similarly, in now the latest release of the tool set, and I'll show you this in our A93 environment because we've got more of these, as we're saying, these all doors closed environments. We can now apply that same kind of control to our access analyzer tool. So when I showed you all those, that's the screens where people had all those different controls at the start. Now, as we're making changes to security in there, it will check for violations to our SOD policy against that. So here, let me come back into this option just to show you what I'm doing. If I'm coming back into Roles Manager, I've got a whole bunch of rules defined, finance rules defined. And if I look at my user, in this case my 9.3 user, I can see in reverse image where I'm actually locked out of these objects. Okay. So now within the new tool, if I go back to back into Access Analyzer, okay, I can look at all the programs, as I saw, all the programs that I have access to, and I can see all the programs that I'm restricted from. And if I go down to the address book function, take an option 3, and when I try and do an allocation, I'm locked out of the address book function because of action code security. No. If I change that action security to YYY, I can see it now gives me this warning message to say, by allocating access to that action code capability for the address book, I'm going to violate all these finance rules. Okay. Now, the reason that these rules have come back to me, if I go back to that access screen, you can see I've already got access to these, so it's not going to warn me about these. It's really where allocating access to this object over here that I'm restricted to, where it's the only one I'm restricted from. So if you see Finance 06 doesn't actually come up into that rule, but into that list, but Finance 07 does, and that's because I've got already access to all of the other elements of the Finance 07 rule. Okay, so wherever changes to action code security, action code security, function key security, or report writer form security, there's all those closed on-off switches. Whenever you make changes to those and they're going to violate your SOD policy through our analyzer tool, you'll now get a warning message. Okay. I'm going to stop talking now because I've been talking a lot, and apologies if there was a lot of information there to get through, a lot of screens and a lot of stuff to get through. So apologies if there was a lot of jumping around, but I think it's important to couch frame the SOD problem in terms of what access control tools you have and what reporting tools you have within World. So I'm going to leave the session open now for another 5-10 minutes for any questions. If you have to jump off, but you do have questions, as I said, my email address is latham@qsoftware.com up here. So please feel free to email me with any questions that you have. Otherwise, I hope to speak to you guys soon. As I said, I'm gonna just leave the line open for a couple of minutes for any questions, and I'll check for questions and get back to you shortly.